Matt Wright.
Yeah.
What a pleasure it is to have you as always at the Networking in Nature gatherings. Thanks for leading the group this morning, which was great for a change because you're so often one of the real active participants and you always contribute so many valuable gems of wisdom to the group. But thanks for coming along again. Thanks for holding the space this morning and leading us on a beautiful tour of the gardens. We're back physically gathering, which has been absolutely magical, of course with some extra safety measures in place, but I think it's fair to say people have really relished that opportunity to connect again, and certainly that's the feedback we've been getting. But purpose of this video, I thought we'd recap a bit of the theme from this morning with you that we shared with the group. We were looking at leadership, which is obviously an area that you've spent a lot of your professional life working in and thinking about and reflecting upon, and it was a bit of a reflection this morning on leadership in the context of a really rapidly and what seems like an increasingly rapidly changing world, and you helped us reflect again on what were some of the cornerstones of leadership. But beyond that as well, you took it forward and helped us think about what's our role in that, and within our own universe, our own context, how can we be more effective, and how can we also reflect upon some of the changes that we've been through. So I thought it'd be nice to maybe just recap some of those sort of cornerstones of leadership we discussed, and maybe if you want to finish with as well a bit of an invitation for anyone watching to get on board with that last challenge you gave the group at the end of the session.
Okay, I'll give it a shot.
Give it a shot.
So we used a framework today to try to pin down some important elements around leadership in the context of change. So the first thing we talked about was culture, and the question was, how would you describe culture? My leap-in point there was, my definition of culture is the way we do things around here, and that embodies behaviour. So people can't see values, they can't see intentions, they can't see models and tools, but they can see behaviours. So behaviours are what actually creates a culture. People brought a whole range of ideas and concepts for them, and people did talk about values, and they talked about purpose and how purpose can make people lean in, and having a sense of something bigger than themselves seems to attract people. Then we moved on to the idea of context, and so if the context changed, do the same ideas, the same principles around leadership apply? Sometimes they will, sometimes they won't. But if the context changes, and we notice it changing, then we might have to think about doing something different. The biggest effect of that context change tends to be on our connections and our feeling, our sense of connection to a group, to an organisation, to a culture. And so if, and as John pointed out, often that'll mean we move away from. If we're not feeling so connected, fear will play a role, and we feel like we are disconnected. So as leaders, we have to think about, okay, what can I do to connect more closely with my people, and how can I help them to connect together? And again, we talked about the complexity of groups and how the more people you have, the number of connections expands as a function of triangular numbers, going one relationship between two people, 3 relationships between 3 people, 6 relationships between 4 people, 10 relationships between 5 people, and so on. So finally we said, if we're going to address this idea of change and context, culture, we have to be creative as leaders. We have to have the ability to imagine something that is not now but in the future, and then say, what is our path to get there? So by creating a vision in our mind, we can build that with our people, preferably, or we can bring it to our people and then say, okay, what are the steps we're going to take that are different to what we've always been doing in order to fulfill that vision? So we asked people, and we brought the idea that we're all in our own little bubble, and we are creating our own little culture. So our behaviours are really important. So the challenge we gave to people was, what are you going to do every day in your behaviours between now and the next meeting, say, to create the vision and the culture that you want? How would you say that summarises what we talked about?
That was a beautiful summary.
Mm-hmm.
And then to your last point, the only thing that I added in that final debrief was that it reminded me of that old classic Gandhi quote of being the change you want to see in the world. And you know, if you're not already awakened to that concept and not already truly living it in this year as the world changes around you, well, it's a great opportunity to say, the world's changing. What role do I want to play in that change? And I think that was a really interesting thing to help people reflect on this morning. So as always, Matt, you've left us with more questions than answers, and that's why we love what you do. And can't wait to reconvene with our Networking in Nature family again soon. Thank you so much again, and we look forward to seeing you all again one day very soon.
And thank you, John, for your leadership in creating the culture that lives here.
So welcome, Matt. I'm a big part of it. Thank you.
Thanks.